Well, this weekend, the official opposition elects a new leader. 2,000 delegates will join the virtual DA Congress to decide between Mbali Ntuli and John Steenhuisen. Mbali Ntuli is a former youth leader for the party. She's now a member of the KZN provincial legislature. She's also grown party support in that province, and she joins me now. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. How do you fancy your chances this weekend?
I think that I'm in with a very good chance, to be quite frank. When I started the race, people didn't think I'd be able to get 2 votes. But as most people have seen by now, there's really been an avalanche of endorsements from various leaders of the party. And I think I've just gotten the party a bit more excited about the idea of contestation of ideas and just some excitement in the political scene. So it's looking like it might be close. Obviously, I hope to be over the line. But either way, I think that it's been a really great campaign, and I'm really proud of myself and the team.
Why do you want to lead the DA?
I think you have to change the way that we do politics, both in the DA and in the country. As a young person, I'm very frustrated, as I'm sure many South Africans are, with the status quo, with the impunity with which our leaders treat all of us, the rampant corruption. And I really don't see that if we continue doing politics the way that we've always been doing it, that there's going to be any kind of change. So I'm obviously running because I want to disrupt the status quo of the politics that we see in our country, but also because I fundamentally believe that there's still so much we could do for South Africa. We're such a beautiful country. We have so much potential that it is an indictment on all of us that we still have children that are dying in pit latrines, or children that are malnourished in constituencies like the one I was in Kanyangute. And somebody has to do something to stop this and to say that this is not right. But we're not going to ever get to that place if we're going to all be very polite in Parliament and giving nice speeches. We've got to be robust about the way that we want to change these things. We've got to get on the ground. We've got to get communities to believe in us as a democratic alliance so they can trust us, and then give us the ability to then they vote to us for 5 years so that we can try and change the country. So I suppose I'm running because I'm mad. I'm mad at the lost opportunity for myself, for my family, for people around me, and for my daughter.
I'm wondering if the DA feels like the right home for you. I know you've been with the party for a long time, but just a couple of things. Ex-DA Chief Whip Douglas Gibson has described you as really good, but he says you're very young, you lack the experience in Parliament, and he's also saying that the party has tried this twice before, with a young Maimani as leader and a young Lindiwe Mazibuko as leader in Parliament, and it's flopped. I know that Phumzile Van Dam is furious about his comments, but how do you feel about them?
Well, I think that they're illogical and really bizarre coming from somebody who's considered a party stalwart. I mean, if he could give me the age when it would be appropriate for me to be able to run, I would appreciate that. But also, by his logic, it means that somebody who might have been parachuted into Parliament last year, for example, suddenly has more experience than me. If he's saying that Parliament is the final decider of who should be leader. And he knows that I've been I'm a second-term MPL, and I am a legislator anyway. I've been a councillor, I've been in different national positions in the party. I've run the DA Youth as chair and as the leader. And I've been able to build the DA in places where it's never existed before. And we've got to decide as the party, do we want to stabilize and just be a parliamentary sort of party that's 20%, or do we want to boldly go out into growing the party everywhere? And if the answer is we want to grow, then I think I'm a more obvious choice whether or not I've been to Parliament. I mean, what is the difference of Parliament? I'll be able to read the rules and to know how to speak in Parliament. I really think that Douglas has bias and is afraid to just say that he wants John to win, and that's his right. But he should say that of putting logical fallacies as an argument.
It does raise concerns, though, and this is possibly because, as Ibrahim Fakir wrote today, that the DA really is a cobbling together of many different political parties, that you've got quite different ideologies within the party. Now, in the September policy conference, there was a decision to go for economic justice over racial redress. Do you feel that the party is moving in the right direction for you and your vision as a politician, and also to attract more young black people such as yourself to it?
Well, this is what I find strange by the past leadership of the party, knowing that we joined with the NNP in 2000, that we've assimilated other small opposition parties into our party. How we can possibly say and continue to believe that we're a purely liberal party is beyond me. But the point is, ideology in South Africa is important, I suppose, as a liberal, in that we believe that the individual is sacrosanct. Beyond that, nobody on the ground is going to eat ideology, and we really are putting ourselves into a corner by making people feel like we're exclusionary. What we should rather be saying is that, look at us, we're a party with so many different people, but our common purpose is that we want South Africa to work, and that's what we focused on. And the fact that we have to have tough discussions within the party and negotiate shared values should be something we should be proud of, so that we can show South Africa will be able to do that with the very complex issues that South Africa has. And so for me, I don't see that as a negative or as a disadvantage. I see it as something that if you had the right leadership in our party would actually become a real strength. And we haven't had that, I suppose. In terms of Douglas saying that this has been tried before, I think I'm very different to the two leaders he talked about, because I have actually started in the ranks and I haven't had any establishments or any people pushing me. I've been running a campaign that people didn't think would ever get to this stage, that is purely built on grassroots activism. And, you know, Douglas should maybe, as I've said to him before, consider that perhaps the way that he's speaking signals to everyone else that there's gatekeeping that's happening. And certainly if I become leader, that's not the kind of stuff I would tolerate.
Do you support economic justice rather than race-based redress?
I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. If you can't address people because of the racial inequality that we've seen or what have been put through for generations, what kind of justice would we be talking about? But that's not the only kind of justice we should be looking at. There are people living with disabilities that are virtually unseen in our community. There are people in the
I tell you why I hear you, but I tell you why I want to bring you back to that question, because that's one of the areas where the DA has been criticised as being a little bit vague on policy, and the concern is that voters have gone, hang on, where exactly do you stand? Because it is such a contentious issue in South Africa, where we are still trying to unpick the legacy of apartheid and what it has done through generations of South Africans. Do you think that we are ready for a party that looks at economic redress and doesn't specifically look at racial-based redress?
So as I said, I don't think it's possible. I think it's something that's noble that we've adopted to say that we want to have non-racialism, and we should certainly walk towards it. But how do you work towards it is by understanding the lived realities of people who have been put into apartheid ghettos, really, in townships and slums and villages and informal settlements, and that is because of their race. So I don't deny that. I don't have a problem with it. What I was also saying to you is we can't only narrow it down to just people that have been racially discriminated, because there are other people who have been discriminated. And as a Democratic Alliance, if we want to show South Africans who care or fight for them, we have to talk about it inclusively for everyone. But in terms of understanding that race definitely is still ubiquitous in our society, I don't think anyone could possibly deny that. In the same way that we also know that females are vastly discriminated against, also something that is not going to be easy for any leader to pretend doesn't exist. So I've been very clear about that. But at the same time, I think it's important that you do it in a way that isn't going to scapegoat people who have had nothing to do with the discrimination that happened for so many years. And white people in our country particularly are constantly scapegoated and made to feel as though they have to pay for the sins of their father. And I think that we can come up with ways in which we can make sure that we're addressing the racial inequality, but also not making people who are in my generation and my friends, for example, feel as though they don't have a place in this country. It's a binary fallacy and a strawman argument that's been put up, and unfortunately our party for a long time has been dancing around it rather than talking very seriously about the fact that we can speak to all these issues.
We've seen a number of black leaders leave the DA in the last year or so. If you don't win the leadership race, are you still very committed to the DA?
I'm very committed to the people of South Africa that have voted for me to be a case in MPL. And I took an oath to serve them and to make sure that I would do my job and legislate and make sure that I was in their communities voting for them. So I will definitely be continuing to do my job. And in fact, if I'm very honest, I think, you know, just getting to the final stages of this race, I didn't feel like I could do this anyway. Like, even a loss would not be a loss for me at this stage.
I have to ask you a little bit about your roots. You're from KwaZulu-Natal. You came from a big taxi family, and I understand there's still a family taxi business. Tragically, your dad died when you were 8 years old. It's not been an easy life for you. I'm just wondering what lessons one can learn from the taxi business and quite a tough upbringing that has either brought you into politics or is teaching you how to cope with politics.
I think you can't be in the taxi industry and not be incredibly thick-skinned and tough and resilient. And I think that those things were, you know, things that I got from my parents, but certainly were honed by the kind of industry that they were in. And so politics is pretty much the same kind of thing, I think. And it certainly, I think, helped me when I've really been feeling down or super vulnerable, because in politics it was a little bit more personal in terms of the attacks that you get. But I definitely would say that the taxi industry and my parents and watching them go through all of the kind of stuff has been great grooming.
Well, I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much for joining us here on ENC. Mbali and Ntuli contesting the DA leadership position this weekend.